It's currently 5:10 p.m. The name of the person being interviewed is Art Hanley. The names of the people attending the interview are Kyle DeSantis, Perry Verino, Lucas Bertone, Liam Payne, and Adam Payne. And Art, if you'd like to say your war, your branch of service, what your rank was, and where you served.
Okay, well, I served in Vietnam 50 years ago. At this point, I was in Vietnam. I was the United States Army, and an E4, a specialist fourth class, when I got out. I did 2 years, 7 months, and 23 days of active duty. I left before my enlistment was up due to reduction in force. If you weren't re-enlisting and staying in to make a career of it, they let you out early because the war was winding down and they didn't need so many people in the Army.
What was the start and ending dates, if you don't mind?
I went in June 26th of 1969 and got out February, I think it was the 18th of 1972.
Thank you.
And I served in, I went for basic training and infantry training at Fort Jackson, South Carolina. From there, I went to Officer Candidate School at Fort Belvoir, Virginia, just outside of Washington, D.C. I did not make it through that. I was dropped, which was the right thing for them to do. I fought it, but they were right. From there, I went to Fort Huachuca, Arizona, for electronic warfare training. I was actually already had orders to go to Vietnam at that point. I was, they called it TDY, temporary duty. I was there for about 5 weeks. The nice thing about that was when you're on temporary duty, they give you a little extra money. So I had a few extra bucks to spend on my month's leave before I actually shipped to Vietnam, and had a little bit of partying. You know, you could drink legally at 18 at that point. I was 21 anyway, but partied a little too much because I didn't think I was coming home from Vietnam. I thought that was it. And as luck would have it, here I am.
Lucas, whenever you're ready, I know you're kind of busy right now. You could go ahead and start off with segment 1.
Lucas, you need to unmute and we can't see you at all. Kyle, maybe you want to start, since I don't think he could hear us.
All right, I'll just go with the first question. And were you drafted or did you enlist?
I was in the process of enlisting when I got my draft notice. I talked to the recruiter, who it's funny because they work on numbers, and he suggested that I just go with the draft and sign up while I'm in training. And I did that. I was working with the Army for my enlistment, and I almost got drafted into the Marines. I'm down at Whitehall Street. There were about 15 or 16 of us going in at that point, and they asked if anybody wanted to be a Marine. Nobody stepped forward, so they picked like the first 6 guys and said, okay, you're Marines. That would have royally screwed me up, but I got drafted into the Army, and a few weeks into my training, I was discharged on one evening, although they wouldn't give me my discharge papers because they didn't want me going into town and partying. And the next morning, I signed in. I enlisted, and then they gave me my discharge papers from the previous day. So it's a combination of both, drafted and enlisted.
Why did you join?
Well, I knew I was going to go into the service. I knew I was going to be drafted. I had looked at the Navy. What I wanted to do in the Navy required a 6-year enlistment, and I wasn't ready to give them 6 years of my life, even though I would have gotten some excellent training. So I started looking at the Army. In the end, I didn't get everything in the Army that I wanted, but it was the right thing to do for me. You know, I signed up for something. They guarantee you certain training, but they don't guarantee that you're going to get through that training, that you're going to pass it, or that once that training is over, that's actually what you're going to do. They just guaranteed, this is the training we're going to give you. In officer candidate school, they drummed me out, and then I still had a commitment to them. You know, as far as they were concerned, it was my fault, and technically it was. It was all good, other than I ended up going to Vietnam, which that was part of my enlistment too. Was I was doing something where I thought maybe I might not go off to Vietnam. I'm still serving the country.
Do you recall your first days in service?
My first days, yes. It was get off the bus, stand at attention. That's not the way to stand at attention. Are you, are you looking at me? Are you smiling? And just everybody was treated the same way, whether you enlisted or whether you were drafted. You were all just insignificant trainees to them. But they were teaching you to work as a unit and to do things by strict standards, which you need to do in the service. You're issued a lot of equipment. You get your hair cut. My hair wasn't real long at that point. I had already got it cut a little bit, hoping that maybe they wouldn't be quite so radical with the haircut they gave me, but that wasn't to be. It's everything you can. And I went in on, as I said, I went in on June 26, 1969. You had a service number. And you had to know that service number. If you wanted to eat, you had to know your service number. When they handed you clothing, you had to know your service number. On July 1st, 1969, we go to morning chow. And when you get to the door and you're ready to give them your service number, they say, "What's your social security number?" Well, I don't know. I know my service number. We don't use service numbers anymore. As of today, you're using social security numbers. Nobody knew their social security number. So we were given about 10 seconds to look at our dog tags, which had it on there, and learn our social security numbers.
Where were you living at the time you joined?
Where was I living when I went into service? Katona. I grew up in Katona, New York, down in Westchester.
Writing down. Great. You guys say that's good for segment 1? Move on to segment 2. Which wars did you serve in?
I'm sorry?
Which wars did you serve in?
I was in Vietnam. That's where I was 50 years ago at this time.
Do you remember arriving, what it was like?
Yeah. When we landed in Long Binh, which was down south, plane comes to a stop And, you know, they said they give you this. They had already told us that if we came under fire, artillery or rocket attacks while we were going in, you know, move to your left or move to your right, whichever way they wanted us to go towards bunkers. And I'm scared beyond all belief. Well, wait, you're making me get off a plane. You're not even going to give me a weapon, and I might be under fire. Not thinking about the fact that it's rockets. No, I'm in a war zone now. And when we deplaned, it was just hot and sticky and miserable. You're just nervous. You just, where am I going? Because you know you're in Vietnam, but you don't even know what unit you're going to yet. And we were down in Long Binh I was there for about 24 hours, and they said you're going to the Americal Division, which was way up north. And just like any other change in your life, what's it going to be like? You know, am I going to know anybody when I get there? The odds were, because of the training I had just been through, that I might be with some guys that I had gone through training with, or I might see some guys I was in basic with that, you know, went the same route, but by a different route, but actually got to the same place. So you're nervous. You know, a little more so because you're at war, but it's, you know, what's it going to be like? Just the unknown, fear of the unknown.
All right. Did you see combat?
I was very lucky. I actually saw very little. When I got to my unit, once I got up to Chulai and I went through the in-country training they have, I got to my unit and they had had a rocket attack a few days before, and one of the bunkers was damaged. So I was given the duty each morning. They threw me in the 3/4 ton pickup with a bunch of empty sandbags, took me down to the beach. They'd pick me up at lunchtime with a deuce and a half. I'd have to load the sandbags into that. And then in the afternoon, I rebuilt the bunker. While I was there, I'd become friendly with a lieutenant who grew up in Yonkers. I was in his office visiting with him when they gave me a break one afternoon. I saw there was an empty desk with a typewriter. My handwriting's always been horrible, so I asked if I could use the typewriter to type a letter home so that at least they'd have one letter they could actually read. While I'm doing that, our first sergeant comes in and he looks at me, looks at the lieutenant, and he said, "You know how to type?" And I said, "Yes, Sarge, I do." And he said, "How many words can you do a minute?" And I said, 25 maybe. I don't know. When I was in school, I could do 30, but I haven't typed in a long time. He said, "This is your job. You're staying here." So I spent the vast majority of my time in an office in the rear, even though my primary MOS was infantry. I never fired my weapon in combat. The only time I fired my weapon in Vietnam was to zero it. Just lucky. And I was what is known as a REMF. That's a rear echelon mother effer. A lot of the infantry guys didn't like us because they said, "Oh, you know, we had to." Suppose the other guys loved us because we made sure they got everything they needed. My job was to send our sensor equipment that we used out to the right guys at the right sites. We had guys all over the Division AO, groups of 4 and 5. And if I was sending them sensor equipment, I knew what everybody's likes and dislikes were. You know, if this guy liked a particular kind of pipe tobacco, or if this guy always liked this kind of candy. If I could send them something that I might be able to find at the PX, didn't always work. But if I could find them something that, you know, made them feel a little better, that went in as a surprise with the equipment. So I knew how lucky I was, and I knew how bad they had it, because our guys were in the worst of the worst places because of the equipment we worked with, what we were trying to do. The one good thing about my job too was I got to meet every one of the guys in our unit. A lot of the guys knew each other only by voice over a radio net. And unless they happen to be in the rear at the same time, getting a couple of days to go down to the beach or passing each other as they were going to or from R&R, they never saw each other. I got to meet every single one of them. I picked them up at the reception center when they finished their in-country training. I drove them down to the airstrip to go out on R&R or to go home. So I have a face to put with every name. I don't always remember every name, but when the guy says, "Oh, so and so," I go, "Who? Oh, yeah, okay." Now I can pull a face up.
Tell me a couple of your most memorable experiences.
Calling home, which would have been this coming week. My brother's birthday is this week. My sister's is next week. My brother had just graduated from high school right after I went to Vietnam. My sister was going into her senior year. And they had what they called the Mars system we could call home. It was shortwave. Somebody on the West Coast would pick up our signal, would put a collect call into your family. You had 3 minutes to talk back and forth. There were guys on either end pressing the buttons. It went very quick. Hi, over. Hi. And then they wouldn't say over, and the person's waiting for that, and all of a sudden you knew 3 minutes was up. But that was that was a big deal for me, that I was able to call them and wish them a happy birthday, and they could hear my voice. One of my good buddies, who was married when he got there, we found out shortly after he got there that his wife was pregnant. I was with him just about every day of that pregnancy, other than when he was on R&R and a few days when he was out in the field. He'd get letters from his wife. He would share how she was feeling, things that weren't too personal. It almost felt like it was my kid, as well as the two other guys that shared our room in the hooch. I actually picked up the phone when the Red Cross was calling to tell him that he was a father. And it was almost, it was the excitement. It was just like, "What? You got a son? This is great." It took, let me think, his son was 25 years old before I met him, before I actually met him. And I got to give him a hug and say, it was a big deal. And then, the deaths of friends, guys who died. I've got one guy, Don Havel, just a great guy. When we got word that others from our unit were killed, he was the one who would bring us out of our funk. He was the guy, he was the jokester. He was the practical joker. Did a lot of crazy things. And on April 1st, 1971, he was killed in a helicopter crash. And we're all sitting around mourning his death and wondering who was going to bring us out of our funk. When we started telling Hav stories, that was his nickname, Hav, for Havel. And by the end of within minutes, we were all crying because we were laughing so hard, remembering him. So every day when I go to work as a veteran service officer, I look at wall rubbings I have framed over my desk. One's of a guy by the name of Howard Alimo, who I graduated from high school with, who was the first guy I knew to die in Vietnam. He died less than a year after we graduated from high school. And then Hav, his name is there because he's the last guy in my unit to die before I came home. And I look at those names and I say, hey, if I can help one veteran today, I've honored your memory. 5 days later, was my birthday. I turned 22. I never thought I'd see it. I thought 21 was my last birthday. And it was just coincidental that in mail call that day, I got a letter from the Department of Defense telling me that I was going home 32 days early because of reduction in force. I got to come home a month early. That was a big day. That was a big thing. Hey, I'm really going to make it home. I'm going to get there. All I got to make sure is that no rockets come in and, land on my head in the meantime. And then, of course, walking in on my family who didn't expect me for another month, walking in on Sunday dinner. That was a big deal.
Just a quick question. Who was you mentioned the father of the child. Who was that again?
My buddy, that was Don Council. He was my best friend over there. It's amazing how you can spend, let me think about this. You got there, Julie. 7-5. We spent 9 months together, maybe 9.5 months. And I became closer with him than anybody I ever have in my life, as far as, you have that bond. Unfortunately, he died 9 years ago from cancer caused by Agent Orange. But he got 17 years of life that he wasn't expected to have. When he was first diagnosed, they had no treatment. He was supposed to be dead in 6 months, and he beat the odds. Got to see his kids get married, see his grandchildren. So he died way too young, but he still had, much more life than he ever thought he'd have. So.
Do you recall any particularly humorous or unusual events?
Okay, I lost you there at the end. Recall any particular humorous?
Unusual events during your service.
Okay. When I first got to Vietnam and I was doing I was rebuilding that bunker. We had a lieutenant who was dating one of the Red Cross girls. Normally, women would not go to parties, either military, like the only women in the military we saw were Army nurses, and they were officers, so they wouldn't come to our compound for a party. Nor would Red Cross girls, aka also known as donut dollies. They wouldn't come to a unit for for an evening party. But because the lieutenant had been dating this woman and he was going home, we had a bunch of donut dollies in our compound for a party. I got very drunk very quick. And it was suggested to me, I guess I said something inappropriate. It was suggested to me that maybe I might want to take a shower and go to bed. And I had enough sense to listen to that suggestion because it was our first sergeant that told me that. So I went to my pooch, stripped down, wrapped a towel around myself, and I'm walking across. I walk out of our compound. We were in a very secured compound because of the equipment we had. It's after dark, and siren starts going, and I sort of look around, as drunk as I was, and said, "Huh, I wonder what that's about." And then I heard the explosions, and there were rockets coming in. Luckily, not right near us, but I didn't realize that. So I go in the front door of the compound, out the side door, and my bunker was all the way in the back of the compound. But I'm too scared. I'm not going there. I'm going to the command bunker, which was right there. And our command bunker had several desks in it, had a couple of couches, and of course that's where they took the donut dollies. I didn't think about it, but they're not going to take them to a little slit trench bunker in the back where you're standing shoulder to shoulder. So I bang on the door, and they open it, and they didn't argue with letting me in, but one of the sergeants who was in there took off his shirt and gave it to me. And I said, "Oh, I'm okay." He says, "No, you're not." And he pointed. I had dropped the towel out in the out in the road. I was so scared. So another one we had this. This was a Havel story. This is the guy I talked about that got us out of our funk. There was this guy, Bill Carey, who he was from Massachusetts, big guy in every sense of the word. I mean, just a huge mountain man. And all the new guys, also known as effing new guys, FNG. If you ever hear the term FNG from a Vietnam veteran, it means the fucking new guys. But Bill was given all the FNGs just to get them into the system a little bit and walk them through things. And Havel came up with the moniker Mom. He was like a mother hen. Bill worried about his boys. So we all started calling Bill Mom. There was nothing effeminate about him. There was no reason, he didn't look like a little old lady. He just acted like one when it came to his FNGs. So much so that even the major in charge of our unit referred to him as Mom. And Mom, she did this, or Mom, she needs to do that. So for Christmas, Havel had taken some artillery ammo boxes, which are wooden slat boxes, 2 rounds in a box. They have a rope handle, they're heavy. He took them apart and he went to a river and softened some of the wood and got it to bend, and he made a rocking chair. He sent a letter to his mother back home in Texas and got her to send yarn and knitting needles and how to knit booklet. And for Christmas morning, Mom got a rocking chair and how to knit stuff. And the funniest thing about it was that Mom actually took up knitting. It was his way to relax, and he was everybody got a scarf from him because he couldn't do anything else. He just did simple scarves. But he found it very relaxing when he was sitting there on radio duty. He basically had the midnight 8 shift on the radio at night. So it was fairly quiet at that time most of the time. So to stay awake, he would knit. And so the joke went both ways. And that was pretty funny. We all got a kick out of that. Nobody knew it was coming.
Do you remember what the food was like?
Our food was fairly good. We did have, we had mess halls. As I said, I was very lucky being in the rear. There was a period there during monsoon seasons where 21 meals in a row were roast beef. And you say, hey, that's pretty good. You got roast beef. Yeah, but it was like shoe leather because it was so old and, you couldn't get rare or medium rare. It was well done. And I'm talking 21 meals in a row, breakfast, lunch, and dinner, just because they couldn't get other stuff into us. One of the things that I was very good at, though, too, was bartering. I had stuff to trade. And I knew guys, because of my job, I knew guys in just about every battalion. And every battalion had a rear, somebody in the rear at headquarters. And, hey, I got this. What do you got for me? So I was good at getting the occasional case of fresh steaks. And we would, if I'd be going, not for us, not for the guys in the rear so much, but if we had a crew of guys coming in from the field, if occasionally they'd bring 1 or 2 guys in from every site because we had some new equipment or the major wanted to have a meeting with them and have everybody in place. And he just let me know, and I went to work and we'd get stuff. So we had some pretty good feeds. More often than not, it was just hot dogs, but once in a while we got to grill steaks. We had somebody who had been a mason, and he was able to build a nice barbecue pit for us. And, we were able to. Beer wasn't real difficult to get, but getting a working refrigerator to keep it cold was difficult. And we had somebody acquired one of those, and then somebody else that we lost the Freon in that. Somebody else was able to get that and fix that. So I had it pretty good. Sea rations, on the other hand, which I did eat when I was in training and when I came back from Vietnam, when I was in a regular infantry unit, when we were out in the field, sea rations, they sucked.
Do you have any photographs?
I have a few. I have a lot of photographs, but very few of myself. I was always taking pictures. It's funny, back before the days of internet, but in the days when we had CompuServe and Prodigy, guy reached out to me on Prodigy. Hey, is this the Art Hanley I served with in Vietnam? This is Bill Lane. And there's one of the names I could not come up with in my mind. And he sent me a picture, and I go, oh, yeah, it was the two of us. Sure, I know you. And then I could tell him where he had served, where he was, what we did. I remembered when he was in the hospital with malaria, all these different things. So we stayed in touch. We still stay in touch. He's unfortunately got a lot of health issues from Agent Orange now. But Bill lived up in Massachusetts, up near Plymouth. And he spent, when my son was in Iraq in 2003, Bill was really concerned about Brian and his unit, and he was sending all sorts of stuff over to Brian, and we were on the phone all the time. So finally one day I said, Bill, you know, we do this stuff online and we talk on the phone occasionally. We got to get together. So at the time, the museum for the division we served in, the Americal Division, was located in, oh my God, where's Holy Cross in Massachusetts? What's the city? Worcester. It was in Worcester, Massachusetts, in the Armory. So that was about halfway for the two of us. Well, we met with our wives, went to the museum, and had lunch. And it was like we had never been apart. Our wives hit it off, but Bill wanted to recreate that photo, which we did, except I refused to take. I was shirtless in Vietnam. I was not going to take my shirt off in the museum and have that photo taken. But yes, I do have some photos, and I can email them. I'll find some and email them to Kyle. I think before you were on, my background here, this is when you flew into July in Vietnam, and they put you on the bus. This is where we went. This is the reception center entrance, where everybody coming into the division had to go through in-country training. Everybody had at least 3 days. Those who were combat arms, infantry, artillery, armor, they 7 days there. And you learned, they went over all the little things you learned in basic training, you know, just as a reminder, a refresher. And then for those of us who were in combat, you had a much larger chance of interacting with the locals. And they wanted to teach you a lot more about the locals, about their religions, about the things that insulted them. You know, there's a lot of bad reps for Vietnam veterans and how they treated the locals, but this was one of the things that they tried so that you wouldn't insult them. You know, don't do this, don't say this. This is a big insult. You want to get somebody really pissed at you, you know, and then you're going to be watching your back if you do that. They also would give you more training on the different kinds of booby traps they used in the area. So that was the first thing you saw on the sign in the background there. It's the division crest in the center, and then all the different units that made it up.
Did you keep a personal diary?
No. Never thought about it. In retrospect, years later, you probably should have, but no. The diary is letters I sent home and letters they sent to me. And a lot of that stuff you don't put in. I found out don't put things in that make them more scared. They never knew when I did the couple of times I was out in the field. I actually went into Laos when we weren't in Laos. That was one thing I got to do. Never mentioned it. I don't think my father ever knew. I don't think I ever mentioned it to him. You just don't want to do it. You don't want to, your family's already scared. You're okay. They don't. They don't know from day to day if you're still alive. So you don't write about those things. There were guys who did. I don't say they were wrong. It was the right thing for them, but I wouldn't do it. I talked about the stupid stuff we did, crazy things, the fun things, about somebody going home, about somebody, like when Don had the baby. There were other guys whose wives had babies. And the party we had, there's a memory. I got a letter from my brother. When I got drafted, they did not yet have a lottery. My brother had a lottery, and the way the lottery worked was they would have all the days of the year. They'd have the dates in one barrel, and then they'd have numbers 1 through 365 in a second barrel. They'd pull a date, pull a number, put the two together. Those who came up with number 1, they're going to be the first ones called. Goes all the way through. My brother's draft number was 365. He was not going to be drafted unless all hell broke loose. And that was one more reason for a party. You had parties when people had babies and this and that. Hey, Hanley's brother isn't going to be drafted. Hanley, you're buying tonight. So off to the enlisted man's club we went.
How did people entertain themselves?
Played a lot of cards. We also had a guy from Utah, Greg Summers, and a guy from Staten Island, Bud Hofstetter, who had guitars and were very good guitar players. And then a guy came in from Kentucky. God, I can see him. I can't think of his name. He also was a good guitar player, and we'd sit around and sing. We did get an occasional USO show. More often than not, they were Koreans or Filipino bands. Some of them were very good. We did get a couple of American shows. Bob Hope did not come to Chulai the year I was there. I had a chance to be part of a lottery to get into a convoy to go up to Da Nang, which was about an hour and a half north of us driving. I decided I was not going to join the lottery. I was going to let other guys in our unit that were out in the field all the time get a chance to go up. I felt guilty. I had it so good. I really did. And those shows were pretty good, especially most of the Filipino bands were pretty good. They were very good at doing covers of Creedence Clearwater and the shows. It was always Tie a Yellow Ribbon, Green Green Grass at Home, Homeward Bound was a big one, and then anything by CCR. So they were very good at doing that. And every 3 weeks or so, somebody would be around, and if you were off duty, you got to go see a show. But the vast majority of the time was playing cards. We did also have TV. We had Armed Forces Vietnam Network. It was one channel. We'd see reruns of Bonanza. We'd see baseball games that were 3, 4, 5 days old. Wasn't great reception, but anything was better than nothing. And we only had one TV. We had a little tiny day room where we'd go in, and if it caught your interest, you stayed. And if it didn't, you'd go off and play cards or bullshit with somebody. A lot of afternoons also in our compound, we'd string up a volleyball net, play volleyball. play jungle rules, meant we could reach under the net and grab the guy as he was going up for the spike. You're not doing that. Grab him. Occasionally that would erupt into a fight because by then, if you were playing volleyball, you were off duty for the day and you were probably drinking beer. But, in the end, everybody got along.
Was there anything special that you used for good luck or anything?
Actually, yeah. A guy I grew up with, Jim's 2 years older than I am. He had gone to Vietnam a year before me. He was way down south. He actually was part of the group going into Cambodia. When I first got to my unit and I had an address where I could, where I knew my return address, which took a couple of weeks from the time you got in till the time you got there. I wrote him a letter and said, "Hey, I'm here. Boom, boom, boom. No, you should be going home soon. Hope all is well and that you get home safe." I got a letter from him in return that I actually received the day he was supposed to go home, and I found out later was the day he left Vietnam. And in it, he sent me a medal that one of the nuns who taught us in elementary school had given him when he left. I was a basic training when he left. So I didn't go to he'd gone to mass that morning. She saw him, not knowing that he was going to be there, knew he was going to Vietnam. She handed him this medal. So he sent me the medal. He said, "Sister Redempta gave this to me to keep me safe. It's done its job. Now you keep it." And I handed it off to another guy when I was leaving.
Did you feel a lot of pressure or stress when you were serving?
Well, in training, especially when I was in officer candidate school, a lot of stress. But that was part of the game. And they tried to break you there. Better that you break in training than when you're, at war. I felt I don't think so much stress as I felt some guilt because I had it so good in the rear when the other guys didn't, and it was just happenstance. If I hadn't sat there that point to type that letter, and there were guys who were jealous, or what did you do to deserve this? And I didn't do anything actually. It was just the luck of the draw, and then I took it upon myself. Actually, I felt more stressed. The most stressed I felt, other than going to Vietnam, was after I came home and I'm going to Fort Riley, Kansas. I felt a lot of stress. Again, I'm not going to be at war. Nobody's going to be shooting at me. But what's it going to be like? Am I going to know anybody? Am I going to make friends? Any change in your life, you get stressed. But pressure, no.
Do you recall the day your service ended?
Not really. Not specifically. I had found out a couple of months before that, we knew there were troop cutbacks. You were being let out 180 days early unless you were re-enlisting. You just went through the motions. You went and had your teeth checked. You had your medicals, this and that. And I just remember flying home and getting picked up at the airport. That was about it. It wasn't any big deal. I had gone to college for a year after high school. I did very well, but I didn't like it. I didn't enjoy it. It wasn't what I wanted. My father, who never graduated from high school, just kept pressuring me to go back for my sophomore year. I was going to Pace in Pleasantville. Went down there to register, went all through registration. When it came time to pay, he just said, "No, I'm not going." And went back, and I told him, and he accepted that. So when I was getting out of the Army, I said, "Okay, let me think about going back to school." And I looked at things that interested me, and I said, "Nah, you know what? You don't want to go to school." I had worked at a deli in Katona when I was in high school and college, and the year before I went in the service. And even when I came home on leave from Vietnam, I went down and worked a few days just to do something, because all my friends were off of college still. So the boss had kept saying he was interested in selling, and I said, "You know what? You love working in that deli." So I had gone home at Christmas and sat and talked with my father and my brother, and we decided to buy the deli. And so when I came home, I knew I had a job, because I was going to go work there for the guy while we finished ironing everything out, just to get back into speed about what to do. And also he was going to show me some more of the ordering stuff that I hadn't done previously, because I was a clerk. So I went and did that, and 6 months later we bought the deli. So it was a fairly smooth transition. I wouldn't be surprised. I don't remember exactly, but I wouldn't be surprised if I went to work the day after I got home from the service. I'm in my third career now. I love to work. I just want to keep going.
Did you make any close friendships while in service?
While in the service, yeah. Like I said, Don Council, who since passed, my buddy Snake, George Jacobs, he was known as Jake the Snake. He too died from Agent Orange related illnesses. Bill Lane. There's other guys I'm on Facebook friends with. One guy, Wayne, I can't think of his last name now, but in retirement, he like me, he couldn't sit still. So he up until about 6 months ago, he was driving the vehicles that accompanied the oversized trucks. And he said, "Hey, are you anywhere near Danbury, Connecticut?" He says, "I got a layover at the rest area in Danbury, Connecticut." And he said, at that point, I was a massage therapist with a practice in Danbury. And I said, "What time are you getting in?" And he told me. I said, "Okay, I'm going to reschedule my clients for that evening. I'll meet you there, and we'll go out and have dinner." Hadn't seen each other in well, that was about 3 years ago. So it had been 47 years since we saw each other. And other than I was bald and he had put on a hell of a lot of weight, I put on a lot of weight too. I knew him the moment I saw him, and it was like we had never been separated. The interesting thing that happens with the guys that you become friends with, like Snake had this problem. I was with Snake for only 6 months. I was there 6 months. He came in, and he had another 6 months after I left. And he'll talk about certain guys in our unit. And I go, "No, I never met them." "Oh, sure you did." And then he goes, "Oh, no, well, wait a minute. Yeah, you left in April. They might have come in June or July." Okay. So we sometimes have that lag. But other guys, when I was at Fort Riley, Kansas, I ran into a couple of guys that have been in our unit that I hadn't been close friends with. But you're walking down the street, or you're in a bar in Manhattan, Kansas. And, "Hey, Hanley!" And you turn, "Hey, Hess, how you doing?" And we've and actually that guy he became a cop. Winter Hess, his name was. He was from Wisconsin. He became a cop, and then in retirement started a private detective business, and he tracked down a lot of people prior to Facebook and all the internet stuff, and reconnected a lot of people. And again, there's people on that list that he didn't know, but through us, he found them, and it was just anybody who served with our unit, Target Mission Force. So.
Did you join a veterans organization?
Yes, but not. In the summer of 2001, Robert Yost, who was the naval science instructor at Brewster High School, in charge of the NJROTC, he retired. And he had been, my older son had been in the NJROTC, and Brian had just been commissioned that spring as a second lieutenant in the Army. And when Bob retired, they had a shindig for him up at the Elks Club, and Brian came home for that. We all went up, and after the ceremonies, they had a picnic in the back, and I took Brian over and introduced him to the sheriff, Don Smith, retired brigadier general, who also had been an armor officer, and Brian was going to be an armor officer. So I left the two of them talking, and I went over to talk to the VFW commander, because I had noticed when he spoke that he had a pin on his hat that showed the unit crest for the Americal Division. That's the one right behind me. And so he's sitting there, and there's a little old lady sitting next to him also with a VFW cap, and I recognized her from church and figured she was a World War II veteran when I saw her hat. But so I went to the commander, and I said, "So when were you with the Americal?" And he looked up at me, he says, "Oh, 69, 70. And I said, "Where were you?" He says, "Duck Foe and LZ Bronco." I said, "Oh yeah, I've been there, been down there, down south of Quang Ngai." And so I told him I was there 70, 71, and I was in July, basically. So this little old lady looks up at me, and she says, "You're a Vietnam veteran?" I said, "Yes, ma'am." "And you live in Brewster?" "Yes, ma'am." "And you're not a member of the VFW?" "No, ma'am." Boom, there was the application, and I joined the VFW. And she was a World War II Army nurse who served in Africa, Europe, and the Pacific. And we became very good friends. Knocked heads a couple of times in disagreements, but I've been very active with the VFW. I am a member of the American Legion. I'm a member of the Disabled American Veterans. I'm a member of the Americal Division Veterans Association, the Military Order of the Cootie, which is an honor society within the VFW.
All right, I'm gonna start the wrap-up portion. For being in the VFW, what kinds of activities does your post have?
Right now, nothing. We do all sorts of community outreach. The main purpose is for veterans and their families, and looking out for each other. But we do the Memorial Day and Veterans Day events. We support the Scouts, the Little Leagues. We go down and do the Founders Day things. Just about anywhere. The Elks, we work with them for Flag Day and the 9/11 ceremonies. If there's a community event and they need our help, we're there. But COVID-19 has shot us down. I don't know if we're ever going to be able to do our breakfast the way we did them. The buffets. We'll figure that one out. Right now, we're working on trying to figure out. Jack Rest passed, and we vowed to continue his Patriot Day remembrance each September 11th, and I don't know that we're going to be able to do that this year. But we're working on that right now.
How did your service and experiences affect your life?
Showed me how good we have it, and don't take anything I have for granted. When I saw how the Vietnamese lived and how they made do with what they had, and people my age that never knew anything but war, it's sort of like you guys right now with post 9/11. You never knew a time that we weren't at war. Luckily, for the most part, the war is not in this country. It's like one day at lunch, I took a break. I didn't go over for chow. I went over and racked out in my room, and we had a rocket attack at that point. And I came running out, and young Vietnamese girl that worked for us, she was out there polishing 5 pairs of boots for us, sitting in this little garden area that we had. And she wasn't reacting at all. So I picked her up and carried her to the bunker. And she looked at me and she said, you're scared. I said, yeah. She said, why? You die, you come back. She believed in reincarnation. And a big cockroach walked by, and I said, yeah, but I might come back as one of those. So, but it was all she ever knew. She was about 16, 17 years old, and she only knew war. And yeah, she was afraid to a degree, but she also knew those rockets, at least the ones we heard, weren't coming anywhere near us, and she wasn't going to react. It just, and it also showed me that I was capable of doing things I never thought I'd be capable of doing. And that I could work around things. You can figure it out.
I got one final question, and this is the question that's the final question I ask for a majority of the other interviews. Is there anything that you would like to add that we have not covered in this interview?
Yeah, I have a perspective that, a lot of veterans don't have, because I have a son who's active duty Army career. I've seen both sides of the coin. I walked in on my family. My mother had passed before I went in the service, but my father got married while I was in the service. They actually waited for me so I could come home and be best man. But I walked in on Sunday dinner, and I saw the emotion in my father, that I was home and I was safe. And you think you understand the fear that a parent has, but you don't until your child is over there. I knew when Brian was coming home from his first tour, but on his second tour in Iraq, he did to us what I did to my folks. He came home 30 days early, and he walked in on Christmas Day. His wife knew he was coming home. She was the only one. She wasn't sure that he'd make it Christmas Day, but knew, that he was going to be home that week. So I've experienced the fear, and I've experienced the elation. And there's a lot of people, but not the majority, that have gone through that.
Thank you for taking your time to be on for an interview and help out.
I appreciate it. Thank you, and best of luck with the rest of your project. I look forward to attending your Eagle presentation when you get it.